Let this meeting come to order. We'd like to welcome everyone to the November 6th school board meeting. Tonight we have a special group that will be leading us in our pledge, and immediately following the pledge, I think they will be doing the school creed. So tonight we have Skylar Lester, Davis Ivory, Brennan Gregory, Gage Shepard, Colin Bratchler, Court Bostian, Noah Bradford, Grant Blanford, and Bella Radowski leading us in our pledge. If you'll all join us.
For everybody. That's what I was thinking.
Very welcome. Thank you. Thank you, boys and girls.
Tell the parents it'll be replayed on television.
Parents and teachers, this will be replayed tomorrow morning on Channel 19 as far as the county station, and you can also go to the Rutherford County government website and go to RCTV, and it's streaming right now, but it's also tape delayed with that website. So probably one of our better pledges, and
I like the creed too.
yeah, yeah. I think Board Member Jordan said he wanted to adopt it, so Okay, if you would join us in our moment of silence tonight, we would like to remember Nona Hall, who lost her mother, Ruth Ringo, on October the 27th. Ms. Hall is ESL coordinator here at the central office, is an ESL coordinator here at the central office. And Mr. Jeff Duke lost his mother, Nancy Duke, on November 4th, and Mr. Duke is the principal at Thurman Francis Arts Academy. If you would, please remember these families in your thoughts and prayers, and we'll take a moment of silence if you'll join us together. Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on. Approval of the agenda. Any questions? Moved by Mr. Holliday, second by Mr. Estes. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now the approval of the consent agenda. Mr. Young. Second by Ms. Moore. Any questions or comments on the consent? Hearing none. You've heard the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Tonight we have two visitors, and we will welcome them to the podium one at a time. Mr. Royce Johnson, you've been with us before. I think you know the drill, so I won't go through the whole diatribe with you, but if you would, again, introduce yourself with your address, and of course you have 3 minutes, and welcome. Glad to have you tonight.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, school board. My name is Royce Johnson. I reside at 5400 Luge Court. Marriage is hard, and even in the best circumstances, when you're head over heels in love, it's difficult times. There's going to be difficult times. And I think we've all heard the statistics that most marriages end in 50% ratio or above. And when you add in special needs, that jumps to about between 80 and 90% when you're dealing with special needs kids within a family. CDC also has statistics that show that 1 in every 110 children have been diagnosed somewhere on the autism spectrum disorder. Children with special needs require additional support to adjust to their school environment and function at an adequate level of learning. There are many variables for special needs children versus a typical child. A simple school layout can create an issue for a special needs child. New faces, new environments, new teachers all create different struggles for the kids. Studies show that on a frequent basis that those concerns are not addressed before children are transitioned from school to school. It is therefore crucial to identify the issues and prevent issues that prevent a successful transition and adjustment before a child is transitioned. A carefully planned transition provides parents with an opportunity to participate as equal partners in the transition process and facilitates the child's entry into a new school. Planning should begin before a child is removed from the current school. Teachers, parents, principals, IEPs, and sensory needs should all be part of this transitioning plan. Again, I am here asking that a simple procedure be put in place to ensure that proper planning has taken place and the transition plan has been agreed upon with all parties before special needs children can be removed and transitioned from one school to the next. I thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate if we would address this. This is a simple layout of a procedure that guidelines need to be in place, and they need to be followed before we remove a child from one school and put them in another. It makes it hard on the child and the families and everybody involved, and it sets the receiving school at a disadvantage because they're not given the proper time and documentation to prepare for that child and their educational needs.
Mr. Johnson, you and I have had several emails, and I think you've also emailed some other board members. If you would like to wait till after the school board meeting, I'd be pleased to talk with you afterwards, and we'll go a little further on this subject.
I'll be glad to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Our second visitor is Jordan Fullerton, and we're pleased to have you tonight also.
Hello, my name is Jordan Fullerton. I'm currently a senior at Oakland High School, and I'm involved in AP and IB classes along with varsity soccer. I would like to present two possible changes to the Rutherford County High School distinction requirements. The first topic I will address is the current requirement of a 31 composite score on the ACT, potentially changing to a 31 super score. The second topic I will be addressing is creating a distinction requirement for all state athletes. What is a super score? The ACT has 4 subsections: English, math, reading, and science, with each subsection receiving a score 1 to 36. A super score is taking the highest score that a single individual has received in each subsection, regardless of test date, to receive the highest overall test score. This allows schools to see how strong a student is in each section without the lurking variables of fatigue during the test or nerves that can affect a composite score drastically. Accepting a super score is a way for universities to compare and focus on a student's knowledge content area by content area, instead of generally comparing multiple composite scores. ACT super scores are rapidly becoming more recognized and utilized. For example, one of the largest Tennessee public universities, the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, and also Sewanee, the University of the South, a private school outside of Chattanooga, both accept super scored ACTs. Another governing body, the NCAA Clearinghouse, also accepts super scores when determining an athlete's eligibility. This leads me to my second topic, all-state athletic recognition becoming a distinction requirement. Currently, the only recognition for distinction for an all-state student is for musical organizations, which include band and choir. I would like to include another organization into this distinction, any all-state athlete. I can testify from a firsthand experience how time-consuming it is to be involved in a varsity sport and maintain above-average academic standards. Since athletes devote much of their time outside of school to their sport, this requires even more diligence, discipline, and time management than a traditional high school student. Not only are these athletes prospering on the field, they are also thriving in the classroom. One of these achievements alone is an honorable title to achieve, but together it is a very respectable accomplishment. I would like to thank you for your time and thank you for considering incorporating both the 31 Super Score ACT and All-State Athletic Recognition as distinction requirements for graduation. By encompassing both these distinction requirements, students would be empowered to grasp tomorrow's opportunities and push their heights to new limits. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fullerton. Is this a policy issue?
The State Board of Education were the original ones that came out with the distinction awards, which was in their policy, but they do leave some discretion to local boards to modify that. And you may want Ms. McLeod, next time we have a policy committee, to bring some of that back. The distinction is defined in our policy, right? So we could take a look at it and see about that. You know, probably if you, Ms. McLeod, if you could in some way communicate with her through Mr. Spurlock or whatever you'd like to about what you've asked for tonight so we can kind of put it together and look at it. Be glad to look at it.
Do we have a policy committee scheduled anytime in the near future? Okay. Would that be okay?
Thank you.
Very well done. We're pleased to have you tonight. You can watch yourself on TV soon. I didn't want to mention that before the meeting because I didn't know if you realized you were going to be on TV. So.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Very nice to have you.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
And Ms. Fullerton, if you could come back, you may have particular insight. When we come to college applications and such, I understand you're a senior, and this distinction, when is it important for you to have knowledge of graduating with distinction? You know the deadlines that you're facing with applications and such.
Well, the distinction is it's gonna set you up to be valedictorian, and that's something that we would need to know in the spring. But there's no deadline on whether valedictorian can be reached because they can always change the diploma if needed. So
Okay.
there's not really a deadline.
Thank you.
To know.
Any other board member? Yeah, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Good. Our next item is Spotlight on Education, Mr. Odom.
The Spotlight on Education is for some of the students that were here earlier with their pledge and all. It's a special education preschool program from Browns Chapel Elementary School. And Ms. Bell, are you leading that up, or Ms. Goosetree, or who's?
We're going to share the mic tonight.
Okay.
First of all, I would like to thank Mr. Odom, Mr. Blair, and board members for allowing us to spotlight the invitation tonight of our 3 to 5 special needs students, our 3 to 5-year-old preschool classrooms. We have 14 preschool classrooms. They're set in 12 of our elementary schools. One preschool is specifically designed for students that are deaf or have a hearing impairment, and one of the 14 are designed for students with autism, and we're working on different behavior issues there. As those behaviors, we get those where we want them, then they come out of the autism classroom and into one of the other of the classrooms, the preschool classrooms. We have morning sessions, and then we have an afternoon session. There are 123 preschool students, 3 through 5, currently enrolled in those classrooms, and we add students daily as they certify for the programs. We also have 3 typical students in every one of the classrooms that help participate in the program. They are students that have been selected. We're looking for good communication skills, behavior skills, in which our special needs children can have that peer tutor into help with their communication skills. Our assessment team is made up of 2 school psychologists, Susan Britt and John Davis. They are both at their conference today and were unable to be with us. It's also made up of 2 social workers, Lynn Farrell and Allison Lewis, and I know Lynn is with us tonight, if you'll stand, Lynn. And then we have 2 speech and language therapists that work with this group, and that's Sheila Hester and Michelle McCoy, and they are both with us tonight. Susan and Lynn and Sheila make up team number 1, and they take care of most of all of the assessments. We are on a time schedule, and when that time gets close to meeting deadlines, then we ask for help from our second preschool assessment team. Lynn is our lead person for our preschool evaluation teams. She works closely with the Tennessee Early Intervention System. TEIS picks the children up from birth to 3, and we have 90 days before the 3rd birthday that we have assessed, and they are ready to come into our programs if they qualify. So she keeps us on that 90-day schedule. We also find children through Child Find. We have that once a year on a Saturday in the spring, and we will have over 130 to 40 children that will come through our Child Find. And through that, we also do some assessments and evaluations for our preschool children. The system has to be ready to evaluate and implement and have that individual educational plan, IEP plan, ready by the time that child enters to us at their 3rd birthday. Our teachers and educational professionals do an outstanding job preparing these little ones to the next step in their education. We are monitored by the state as a preschool classroom, so we follow all state and federal laws concerning those areas. Tonight, I want to introduce Ms. Goostree from Browns Chapel, and she's going to talk about her experience and the program that's at her school. And then I want to ask all my teachers at this time to stand. These are the teachers from our preschool classrooms. We have some educational assistants here tonight, and if you will stand, we could not do the job without them. And I also thank my parents before they went out the door, because our parents play such an important role in their child's education. They are their child's first teacher, and we learn a lot from them, and that's shared at our meetings and our intake with our preschool program, and that hopefully gets us all off to a great start, and I thank you for coming. When Ms. Goostree finishes, then Ms. Mapes, one of our preschool teachers at Browns Chapel. I think I said Cedar Grove earlier. I meant Browns Chapel. I still want to put her at Cedar Grove, but she's also going to tell you a little bit about the program, and then that will conclude our spotlight, and if you have any questions, any of us will be happy to answer those. Thank you again.
Hello. Thank you, Mr. Odom, Mr. Blair, and all the board members for letting us brag on our program tonight, because we do love these children. I'm a big believer in beginnings. If you don't get started right, it makes the climb a lot tougher. So these first steps into education are so very important, and I can tell you I've been witness to this program in 2 schools for many years, and it's an inspired program to put these children together with typical peers before they ever walk into a kindergarten classroom and let them learn how to do school and work with their parents is just a phenomenal opportunity for all these kids. I see such a difference with children who have this opportunity and get started in kindergarten. The transition is so much better to move on into a much more rigorous school program, which is what we have now in kindergarten. And I know Ms. Mapes' program particularly, and it is a very driven program for each and every student. Every student has a plan. There are big expectations. There's a lot of fun in the day, but this is not babysitting. This getting ready for, the rigors of school as it is today. And I don't want to take up too much time, but I will say all these ladies that just stood up a minute ago, this is the most challenging job in the school system and the most rewarding, I'm sure. But they, to bring all these children together when they're first beginning, and some of these children have never even been in a situation where they had to sit in a chair for very long or attend, and they have patience of Job. It's amazing. And they can, if you ever, sometimes you're in the office and you get kind of bogged down with, what's going on today and all the pressures. You need only to walk down that hall and put your head in that classroom, and you know what you're doing here, and then it's all worth it because they're precious. And you all, I just commend you so much for coming every day and just giving so much of yourself and making a difference for all these kids. So I want Miss Frida to tell about her program because she's very proud of it, and we are as well. And I just want to introduce Miss Mapes. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. Odom and board members. I just want to say that it is an honor for my class and my school to be represented tonight. It was a big deal. We worked on the pledge and doing our Browns Chapel Creed. We practiced that, and it was a huge deal for them today to get to stand up there and participate and do that for you. And it was great for you to see all their faces as they went through and exited there. It's important to their parents, and it's important to them, and it's truly an honor to be here tonight in front of you. I know that I speak for all our preschool teachers when I say that our program is first and foremost about the individual student. These little ones represent a wide range of disabilities and developmental delays. In preschool, we address each student's individual needs through their individual education program, their IEP. More than 80% of our students are identified with speech and language deficits. Some of our students come to us with no words at all. We work very, very closely with our speech and language teachers to address these needs and begin to form sounds, words, put words together, and eventually speak in sentences. I can say myself, I have had students that came with not even a sound and slowly developed those sounds, developed the words, and then today this student is speaking in sentences. Some preschoolers come to us with gross motor needs. They require physical therapy and interventions to build the strength and coordination they need to walk and down the stairs, to run on the playground or kick a ball, or simply just to move about the classroom. Many students need help with their fine motor skills, learning to properly grasp a crayon or a pencil, to make their very first marks on paper. They may not be able to work a puzzle or even hold an open cup. Our occupational therapists serve these students and help us and assist with the equipment we need to meet their needs as well. A growing number of our preschool students come to us with a diagnosis on the autism spectrum. We implement strategies and interventions to address these needs also. This may look like sensory equipment, which may be a special seat or a pressure vest or a weighted lap pad so these students can attend, can focus, can listen to story, and begin to learn. We may have a picture schedule that helps this student know what comes next in their day to help them organize their thoughts and make transitions easier. Every day in preschool, our students participate in circle time, where they learn to sit and attend to a story, sing songs, learn poems, and in this large group setting, they learn to count the calendar, they learn the months of the year and the passing seasons. They learn to raise their hand up for the teacher to recognize them or to answer a teacher's question. They learn to be patient and wait for their turn to line up. They learn what it's like to be part of a classroom and how to participate in that classroom. In preschool, we also begin to develop academic skills that are so important for our students to take on to kindergarten class, to help them be successful there. Early literacy skills of understanding that text represents words, listening to many, many books read aloud, and recognizing their own name when it's written on a word strip. We introduce the alphabet in preschool. We practice making those beginning strokes to form the letters to begin to write. Our curriculum for writing is called Handwriting Without Tears. It is a developmentally appropriate curriculum that takes us through the right order developmentally so that children properly learn to write their alphabet. We teach beginning math skills. We introduce math skills with identifying basic shapes, the circle, the triangle, the square, the rectangle. We start to develop visual discrimination to recognize pattern and to learn that our numbers represent quantity. And one part that I think is so important, a crucial area of need for all of our students, is developing independent adaptive skills that they need to work through their daily school routine. And this looks like independently using the restroom, using utensils to feed themselves, learning to drink from an open cup, carrying their tray at breakfast or at lunchtime, standing in line in the cafeteria, walking in the hallway in a line, caring for their backpack and their personal belongings, entering and leaving the classroom, and developing appropriate social skills for school. And of course, all our students on IEPs, their progress is chartered and measured. And always, each student's learning is paced appropriate for that individual, every program of learning. And I just want to say to everyone that I speak for all of those preschool teachers there who know just how important it is to have a special needs child involved in a program like our special ed preschool. They come out of our program with these skills and have made progress that will be that first building block in their academic future and in their life. We give those skills, and I know I speak for all of you, when you see a child that's finally able to write their name or read their name on a word strip or finally carry their lunch tray, it is a huge accomplishment. And these are things they take forward with them into life, as well as to kindergarten and on in their academic futures. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you. Board members, questions, comments?
One new detail that I heard was the inclusion of at least two, and you use the term typical students in a classroom. As a board member, I often get a phone call from that family that is looking for admission into this program, and my standard answer is that program is intended for children that need a helping hand, need a leg up into the system. Did I hear that there is an opportunity for a small select group of typical students?
Absolutely. We have 3 typicals in each one of our preschool classrooms.
Okay.
Is what we try to do, because the law requires that children be with their peers as much as possible, and a lot of that is in inclusion. And so with our preschool children, we bring the peers into our classroom. And we go through a screening on that Child Find Day and Saturday, and we will have a large number that go through a vision test, hearing test. They'll do some communication with us. We'll look for social skills. We'll do a cognitive, and then they're scored, and then they are arranged from our top score all the way down. And so from that, and the parents will request what school they would like to, if chosen for a typical. And so we rate from there, and we work very hard and very carefully and be as fair as humanly possible when we are selecting typicals, because we get a lot more applications than positions that we have open.
I was going to follow up. I imagine the number of applications for the typical versus what we can accommodate is extreme.
It is, and it's wonderful to go in and watch the classroom and watch the typicals, how much they're learning from a special need child, the same as the special need child is learning from them. And that follows through with them in kindergarten also as they go in.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank you all for coming. I think your program and what your teachers do is inspirational, and thank you so much for our little door hangers here. These are awesome, and it was a very thoughtful thing for you to do for us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this group of preschool teachers and educational assistants that they come and show up every single day. I appreciate that so much. Thanks again.
Did you mention at any time a typical day, the length, how they're integrated at the beginning of the year since they
Okay.
into school before,
Of course
and how long their school year?
Okay, they are the same school length as all of our other children, the 180 days. They come in, like we had a morning shift of 3.5 hours, and then they leave, our typical stay. And then we have an afternoon group that come in and for their 3.5 hours. During their 3.5 hours, they're getting the curriculum from their teachers. They are being worked with the speech and language therapists. They may receive occupational therapy, and they may also receive physical therapy. If there are vision goals, then a vision teacher may work with them, just according on what all that they need. They do ride our buses. Our buses run the routes to pick them in the morning, take them home, and then pick up the afternoon shift group coming in with it. So they're very busy in the 3.5 hours that they are in the sessions with us.
To me, this would be the truest sense of intervention. So, very pleased to have seen the program. Anything else from anybody? Mr. Odom?
Well, I get a chance to see it sometimes.
I was going to say,
I really do appreciate it. I recall what the teacher said, or Miss Goosetree said especially, if you kind of feel down, just go visit one of those rooms and look at the smiling faces and see what they can do, and the pride when they accomplish something. It'll make your day.
For an opportunity for board members to visit, so we would not be a distraction, would we go through, excuse me, the principal, Ms. Goosetree, or would we go through this?
you may call me, and I'll be happy to set it up for you with the principal, and we would love for you to come out and visit our classrooms. I will say one other thing. Ms. Mapes was an educational assistant with us, and she fell in love with the program, decided to start going to school through the Bethel program, and graduated and became one of our teachers. I think we have one other person. Yes, right over here. Yes, Nicole Skelton also, and Cheryl Williams also. So we have, when you grow your own, it's wonderful. It's wonderful. Thank you again.
Oh, thank you. Congratulations. Good. We have Ms. Goosetree, who's a principal, and of course, I saw Dr. Vogel earlier. She's still wanted. Okay, Dr. Vogel, we were with her this morning, for Mr. Jordan and I, and of course, Mr. Spurlock is here from Oakland High School. So pleased to have y'all today. Mr. Odom, I think you're getting ready to move to the podium and make a presentation for our report card. This is exciting stuff. You may want to stay. Or not. Have a good evening.
They're resting up for the next day.
I imagine
probably.
so.
Thank you for this opportunity to share with you some information from the state report card, which was released a little over a week ago. Most of the data which you're going to see today comes from the 2014 report card, which covers 13-14 year, or in some instances I'm going to do some comparative data and trend data that will come from report cards in prior years. We're going to look at student enrollments. We're going to look at some staff statistics, some assessment results. We'll look at some financial comparison. We'll look at 5 and 10-year trend analysis. And unless you have some comparative data, data standing by itself really doesn't always mean a lot, so tried to provide you some of that. If you have a question, please stop me and we'll talk about it, and that's how we learn. It's very important you as board members understand these numbers for your constituents, for yourself, because you help us, we'll have a budget coming up and looking at what some of our priorities and what our needs might be. Okay. The first one is some enrollment demographics for 13-14. So I have selected Rutherford County Schools is the one on the left, RCS, and of course then Tennessee would be the statewide statistics from the report card. I selected some counties that surround us, some like Wilson, Williamson, Sumner, some others that are similar to size for us, like Montgomery, Putnam. Hamilton County is the next size up from us, and then Murfreesboro because it's local. Interestingly, there, if you'll look at Hamilton County, you look at Rutherford with our 41,497, and you look at Hamilton County there, you see 43,531. And if you did not know that, if you're on TV watching us tonight, you add Murfreesboro's approximately 8,000 students to that, you can see how much Rutherford County has grown in recent years. Some other information that will be of interest to you as you look down that column is some demographic breakdowns. I picked the 4 primary ones. There are some others. There's one called mixed, and it includes more than one, but basically most of your percentages will be in those. So you can kind of see for Rutherford County what our percentage happens to be. We in some ways mirror the state. When we look at that, at the bottom is a graph. But you begin to see, and looking at the graph or looking at the numbers, the diversity in Rutherford County schools. There was a little newspaper story about that the other day. And so it kind of shows up when you see the numbers. Kind of for some information for you, we are now, Rutherford County and Murfreesboro put together would make us the 4th largest school area, certainly in Tennessee, when you look at it. Shelby County is 149,928, Davidson 82,806, Knox 59,232, and Hamilton 531. So you begin to see where we fit now with the growth that we've had. Looking quickly at some financial comparisons to see, happy to say we're still one of the more financially efficient systems, I think, in the state of Tennessee. Our per pupil expenditure, based upon the numbers from the state last year, is $8,365.50. The Tennessee average per pupil expenditure is $9,346.30. You can look at across the other counties. There's a few that spend some less than we do, some that spend more than we do. An interesting fact for county commissioners and others sometimes, where does this funding come from? That's interesting. So in that column again, if you look at Rutherford County locally, 38.24% would be local funding, and that would be from a local property tax, sales tax, any other revenue that would come through our county commission. Federal number, 7.80%. And that's driven a lot. If you look at something maybe like a Montgomery County or somewhere where there may be more federal involvement, or sometimes where socioeconomic draws more federal funding, you'll see the numbers vary a lot, driven by what those happen to be. Of course, Fort Campbell for Montgomery County drives a lot of that. And then from Tennessee, 53.95% of the budget in Rutherford County comes from the state of Tennessee. The statewide average is 48%. So we're using more state monies than you'll find across the state. Up there again in local percent, the statewide average is 39.19%. In Rutherford County, it's 38.24%. At the very bottom, I have added through many of these, I added some calculations to it. For instance, the line about the difference from the state average would not be in the state report card, but it's simply some things in spreadsheets where I have added some information to make it easier for you to review when you take it home and take a look at it. We were a little closer to the state average. Last year, if you remember, we were $1,282 below the state average. This year, they're showing the $980.80. I know Jeff Sandvig told me, he said he didn't see how it could be that much difference. But again, this is their calculation and their numbers. So you'll see some fluctuation from time to time. The per pupil expenditure, I pasted in the definition so that you could see what that includes. It includes things like instructional materials, maintenance, transportation, of course, teachers and other things like that. So it includes a lot of those numbers. Yes, sir.
Mr. Odom, I just wanted to point out, I really credit and confirm this if I'm understanding it correctly, but when we're making greater use of Tennessee dollars, state dollars, than the state average or other systems, that's really a testimony to the accurate reporting and the accurate work of our central office staff in accomplishing the task of reporting to the state and capturing those dollars. Am I close on that?
Oh, I think you are, and I've heard some commissioners speak. I mean, this is not a complaint from us that we're spending less than that. I think Will Jordan made a statement. It just shows that we in Rutherford County try to be as efficient with the taxpayer dollars as we can be. And as we get a chance to look at scores and other things, you can be the judge of how our expenditure, what we're doing, how that's playing out.
Well, as we talk about the budget questions that'll come to the board, and we look sometimes at central office staffing, and we're trying to justify those staffing dollars versus staff that are in the classroom with student interaction. I think it's particularly notable that figure right there, how we get money from the state and accomplish, the reporting aspect of what really happens here at the central office. That's one of the places where we shine right there, and it maybe justifies when we have to add staff here at the central office.
There's another slide that's going to show staffing, which will answer some of those questions and may bring another one from you. So that's kind of some financial comparisons looking at the 1 year across those particular districts. Another thing, of course, what you saw tonight, some of our special area enrollments, and this becomes unique very often to that particular school district. It kind of defines you. In the English Language Learner category, ELL is the way it's listed with the state, Rutherford County has 2,109 ELL students. It makes us the fourth largest. As you look across with enrollments, when you look at Wilson, Williamson, Sumner, Montgomery, as you look across those particular numbers, even more than Hamilton. The number for Knox, if you're in the first bulleted item below, is 2,179. And remember, they've got well over 50,000 students for their 2,179 with our 41,000 and something students. You can see our number at 2,109. And that's been one of the big changes. And one of the things that drives your needs for funding, of course, are these demographics. The ratio for ELL to teachers to students is about 1 to 40. I can remember probably 5 or 6 years ago when the state reduced that number from 1 to 45 to 1 to 40. And I was reading the bill as it was going through the legislature, and it said no potential physical impact. It required Rutherford County to hire 5 additional teachers that year. So for Rutherford County, it was a significant physical impact, but statewide, they didn't consider the reduction from 45 to 1 or 40 to 1 to serve. Now, students do not stay in ELL all day. They're in the classroom, so you have students in and out. The other thing that people sometimes question, Tennessee is an English-only state. So students are taught in Rutherford County schools and in Tennessee schools in English. Now, do we have some educational assistants? Do we have people that help us with translation? We're required by federal law, if parents come in for conferences, provide interpreters. You'll see very often some of the things that we send home in more than one language. You know, that's a part of it, but we're required to do that, and we do that so that we can communicate with our parents. The second line is economically disadvantaged, 42.2%. Tennessee average 58.8%. But I guess one of the things that really begins to stand out, Rutherford County has increased about 1% per year. That's the second bullet below. Last year at this time, we were looking at a report card of 41.1, so we're up 1.1%. So over the past number of years, and you'll see this when I do the 5 and 10 year comparison, you will begin to see that it's about 1% per year that we're having to grow. So we're becoming quite different from, say, a Williamson County. It's 11.9% free reduced lunch versus Rutherford County. It gets harder to compare apples to apples sometime when you look at some of those particular differences. But anyway, you have percentages across there to look at.
Mr. Odom?
Yes, sir.
Free and reduced lunch and economically disadvantaged, are those terms interchangeable?
They are. The state defines them as economically disadvantaged, but the criteria is those that would qualify for free or reduced lunch.
Well, nothing else goes into the economically disadvantaged percentage?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
The third line there is SPED, or special education, is kind of the short term for that. I have some pride in this one. We're 11.4% special education. We have one of the lowest. It includes also your gifted, your speech language. It includes any students that you serve through the special education program. 11.4%. The state average is 14.2%, and you look across at a Sumner County with 16%. You look at a Montgomery with over 14%, a Putnam County, which is Cookeville, 17%. Hamilton with over 13%. I'm tell you what this says to an educator, what it says to me. It says to me that Rutherford County's intervention programs are intercepting a lot of these disabilities before these students reach a point that they're declared special education. Before they arrive at, prior to this year, you had to have what was called the discrepancy formula to be classified as learning disabled, and that was a federal measure and discrepancy formula. You would do your IQ, and that results in a number. Then you would look at them in a major, say a math or reading, and if you had one standard deviation or more discrepancy between the performance and what the should be, then you were classified, you could get learning disabled under special education. So if your interventions are working, if our response to intervention programs are working well, then that number will go down, because we'll pick up students before, and we'll address those needs before we get to the point to getting that discrepancy, where they're using the RTI program to help identify a student. Now, my goal personally is to see that number somewhere around 9% or so. Now, that includes children who are physically disabled. That includes students who have speech impediments. Also includes our gifted kids and all. So you're not, I mean, there is a point, I think, to where you're not, just some simple nature of people, that you're not going to go all the way down. But there's some pride in seeing those numbers go down, that you're addressing the needs of students. Our teachers, our principals, our schools are paying attention to this and trying to address those needs. And you are, as you look at that. Let's look at staffing comparisons. This is one of the ones I thought I would let you take a look at. This is the numbers, again, that comes from the state report card. The first line being the number of teachers. People ask sometimes, how many teachers in Tennessee? Well, if the report card's right, there's 65,000 teachers, public school teachers in Tennessee. You can see the numbers as they go across. The next line is not in the report card, but I simply divided the number of students that we had enrollment on the prior slide by the number of teachers here, and came up with the line is students/teachers there. So our pupil-teacher ratio, where everybody is included, and if you look at the definition from the state report card, this includes librarians, counselors, interventionists. All of your people are really counted in this particular number. So it's more than just the classroom teacher. We're pretty close to the state average. You know, in service, if we were going to be somewhere below the state average and something like this is a good place to be. It's you're putting your resources and your assets where the children are, or the ones that you're trying to reach and serve. But that number varies. Again, and sometimes you can kind of see how that works and how it begins to play out sometimes in your academic. How many administrators do Rutherford County Schools have in a 13-14 year? 121. And so if I, again, take what percent of our average daily membership, which is that, going back to the enrollment number, what they're counting is how many students you have. So 4.2% of Rutherford County's teachers or people that we employ are administrators, or will be classified as administrators. Find me another one across that list less than that. So again, as we talk to your constituents, sometimes I hear, look at how many administrators you have. I can remember, and it's been probably 8 years ago or so, and it's kind of referencing something that Mr. Holliday you spoke of. The Tennessean did a story on this, and they took Middle Tennessee counties and all surrounding counties and all, and in that story, 8 or 10 years ago, Rutherford County had the smallest ratio of administrators to teachers and students of any of the counties that surrounded. I would say it's probably still true. As you look at that, so you can see the Tennessee average of administrators to teachers is 7.1%, and we're 4.2. So again, you know, sometimes in your budget we'll say, hey, we need to add another assistant principal here. That we need some, and we have a number of schools that do not have an assistant. We really need to provide them that help, especially with the teacher evaluations and the resources that you need. So you can look people in the eye and say, hey, if you want to compare us to others and administrators, to students, I don't think we're overextending that. That's a pretty good number to take a look at. What's our percent of highly qualified teachers, which was one of the things that came along with No Child Left Behind. It was a measure. 100% of Rutherford County teachers this last year qualified as HQ. Everybody was highly qualified. We were able to find the people to put in the classroom, that people were not teaching out of their areas. You know, they were teaching what they were certified and capable of doing. How about teacher certification waivers? Rutherford County has 0 of those. Montgomery County has 11. Hamilton 4. There's some others with 0. Putnam, Williamson. One of the places where you very often have teachers on waivers is in ELL instructors. They're not necessarily that many, you know, or also some of your really hard to staff positions or something like that. So we have still been able, and I'd say Ms. Barnes is at a conference tonight, but our HR department works very, very hard. Our principals look for teachers that are certified and qualified to teach the courses, and at least for last year, we have no student teachers on waivers in Rutherford County. Here's some other information. Let's look at attendance and graduation. And again, Rutherford County is the one on the left. You can see our K-8 average attendance, our high school. Bill Spurlock, in all my years, that I don't think I've ever seen that high school came out with a higher attendance rate than elementary, but y'all did it last year. So something's going on right there. And in fact, I didn't see that in the other counties across there in the comparison there. So again, it looks like our people in attendance, teachers that are working on that, the graduation coaches and the schools got a lot of emphasis there. But basically in Rutherford County, and typically across the state of Tennessee, pretty good attendance of our students. You know, they're pretty good about coming. Let's look at the graduation rate, which is kind of compares to all. The graduation rate last year for Rutherford County was 91.3%. This year it is 92.5%. The last line, again, is a calculation that I added to this data as I pulled from the different report cards, the 1%, particular growth, looking at that. Let me say the grad event dropout rate. Now, what is that? That is a one-year measure. So And one of the good things for that, because the graduation rate is calculated over 4 years, when a student enters 9th grade, the clock starts ticking. They have 4 years and 1 summer to graduate in order to qualify to make the grad rate. And I've stood up here before, and I'll tell you, I vehemently disagree with that federal definition, because I think if it happens to take a student 5 years to graduate and they stay with it and graduate, everybody should get a pat on the back. You should not be penalized just because it's 4 years and 1 summer. And again, the legislators that did this may not have got out of college in 4 years, and that would make them a dropout under their own definition. So the event rate, though, and looking at that last one, is kind of your 1 year average. And this doesn't hold totally true. But if you multiply that by 4, since you do a 4-year calculation, you get close to being able to project, if you can keep up what you're doing, close to project of what your graduation might be 4 years down the road. So if we're running around a 1% rounded off, somewhere down the road, hopefully in 4 years, if we can maintain this, we should be in that 95, 96% rate for graduation. But again, we compare very well when you compare our rate with other school districts, those around us, and all that you see with our 92.5. I did a little comparison there at the very bottom, the little blue box at the bottom. What's the 10-year change? Actually, in 2004, Rutherford County's rate was 84.7%. Last year, the 92.5. So over a 10-year period, our graduation rate has improved 7.8%. So, and one thing you'll learn about Don Odom, he looks at trends more than single years. Trends always are to me, much more reliable to look at. You have anomalies that occur 1 year at a time, but when you do trend analysis to look at how you're going or growing, that's a much better picture of how your performance is working. So, what is an 8% improvement in graduation rate? Well, when you have 3,000 or about 3,200 students in 12th grade this year, when you have 8%, virtually more that's graduated than they did back then, you're another 240, 50 kids that have graduated. And that's important to them. It's important to us.
Mr. Odom, did you recognize that attendance improved also with that graduation rate? Because I think that has something to do.
Teachers will tell you, and principals will tell you.
You can't educate them, so.
Absolutely. It's very closely connected in that, but you have as a district done some things to help with graduation rate. We do some things other districts do not do. We're one of the few that still has a summer school program. You know, kids do not graduate because they don't get enough credits to graduate. But you also realize that Rutherford County, if you remember, we raised our credit requirements above the state. We require 23 credits to graduate. The state will let you get out with 22. So we actually increased our requirement to do that at the same time, but we offer a summer school. We have night schools for students to make up the credits. And in the last couple of years, you've been seeing the growth in our online courses that's being taken. So we do a lot of things. And then your graduation coaches to work. I think that's probably had one of the bigger factors to track students that become at risk. And I interviewed one this week. I was going to schools, how they are coming back and contacting parents, following up with them. Some of our students have no one at home necessary to watch them closely and encourage them and show them where they can go. And you know, one of the things with the new Tennessee Promise and some of that statistics, and you asked that question, so in your folder tonight, it's the Tennessee Promise numbers for Rutherford County, is the mentor program that's attached to that. And it's the same philosophy again with our graduation coaches, that sometimes with these teenagers, they need somebody to speak to them every once in a while and talk to them and encourage them and help them see the end road from where they are right now. But I'm very pleased to see our trend going up and really pleased to see that event rate. I think that's something interesting. The next one is some information. The top part the top part is the graduation rate breakdown. That's on the report card. If you stop and take a look at that, this tells you demographically what's our graduation rate on those. The girls still do a little better than the boys at graduating. But the only subgroup really that we had that was below a 90% graduation rate is our Asian population. And I think what that might be, and we've talked about this before, in the Smyrna-Laverne area, we've been getting a significant number of refugees placed that are Karen students. And they are students who, or people who lived once upon a time in Burma. They have been in refugee camps in Thailand, and they've been relocated, a number of them here. You know, principals tell me these are, they like these students. They're typically not discipline problems. They want to learn. But many of these students come to us because of the time they've been in the refugee camp. When they come to us, they may be 8th, 9th, 10th grade age. They just haven't been in school for years. They learn at a good rate. But again, can they get out in 4 years and 1 summer? And that's very tough for them sometimes when you're trying to learn a language and earn 23 credits. You know, so that kind of gives you a breakdown. The bottom one there is not in the state report card. That's something we received a little bit earlier in the year's report, which we distribute to principals and all. And I'll say to you, and I'll say the same thing to state too, there's still some problems in counting students who graduate. For example, down there you notice that the name Roy Waldron is there. There's never been a high school there. But there's some student in 4 years that got tagged to Roy Waldron. You look up there at Central Magnet School, basically, and you look at their graduation at 99.40%. They had a girl that graduated a year early. We appealed to the state. They denied our appeal. I do not know why. We can show she graduated. She was a living, breathing person that graduated a year early. She finished in 3 years. But we every year go through this process of appealing and sending in documentation, that sort of thing. Our graduation coaches, our attendance department works on that. And what I say to the state, we want to count everybody that's legitimate in graduating, because if we have a higher rate, then you as a state will have a higher rate, graduation rate. So I don't think we need to be allowed to sneak anyone through, but if they graduated, they graduated, and let's give them credit for it and do that. So you can tell, just simply by looking at the numbers, there's still some fallacies in the way that's accounted. Mr. Estes, do you see anything special in that red box there that I have?
Yeah, CTE's done pretty well.
Yes, where the overall is 92.49, a student that's enrolled in the CTE program or a completer in that program, their graduation is 97.99%. Now, why is it CTE has a higher graduation rate than the others? I've heard you say it. Well, I'll let you say this for me.
Kids are engaged in their classes more by being in a class where they have to learn how to communicate and add and subtract.
They know where they're going. When they're working on a skill, they have a goal. They have other students with them that are working on the same goal. And kids, again, teenagers very often need to be able to see the end from where they are, and they see that if I learn this skill, I complete this CTE program, I may be able to get a job when I get out. I may do those things. But our CTE teachers do a wonderful job of connecting those, and so our board's emphasis for CTE being one of your highest priorities pays off in graduating students. It makes a difference. Let's look at ACT performance. For this last year, and I knew a little bit of this, but it was embargoed data when Beth Duffield was doing our presentation the other night. But for this year, the ACT is 20.1. As you look at that particular number, and you can compare us with other districts across that's listed in comparison there, that's an increase of 0.4 for last year. And in the world of CTE, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10 is significant growth. I mean, it really, you don't see 2, 3, and 4% changes in ACT scores when you do that. So it's 20.1. Now, what is ACT readiness? That's something that's kind of with ACT, and the definition is beneath that for you. And ACT readiness is some benchmarks of achievement that for students who reach this benchmark, they have a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher in college, or a 75% chance of earning a C. You know, so ACT college readiness for all 4 subjects is also another recommendation. And so as you look at the ACT readiness, Rutherford County's is 19%. The state average is 16%. As you look at that, Mr. Spurlock, why do we do 63% for English? I mean, that's our English teachers are really getting them ready for college. When you look at that, it's kind of interesting to see some of those percentages, but it tells you again how students have unique abilities, where many may have a really strong science or a strong English or something like that. They might be below that particular readiness in another subject. So again, that's a measure. But looking out to the right in the last column, the change from 2013 to 2014 for readiness, that they have attained this 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher and 75% chance of a C. All of those are positive, whole number percentage growth. Receiving an ACT of 21 or higher, which is Hope Scholarship eligible, last year increased 2.7% to 43.8. And this is why the Tennessee Promise is so important. Across the state of Tennessee, there's only 36.9% that are eligible for the Hope Scholarship. So for all those other students, the Tennessee Promise to go to a 2-year college or to a skill or technical school gives these students some hope and some opportunity to do that. And very often, once they go to that 2-year community school, they're ready to finish the last 2 years. But again, that's a movement to try to get Tennessee. And this is one of the things when Governor Haslam talked about Drive to 55 and this sort of thing, to try to get Tennessee as competitive as we can be with other states for jobs, for opportunities. And part of that is your ACT scores, your graduation rates, many of those things to do that. But again, the trend is upward and very good. Let's look at report card and achievement a minute, if we could. And this is some of the things you want to look at. And this is the way the state report card, it divides it in several areas. 3 through 8 in math, reading, science, and social studies, Rutherford County receives straight A's. A number of other districts receive straight A's. Definition is at the bottom. It's basically an NCE, a normal curve equivalent score. In the statistical world, 50% would be your average, right? The 50th percentile. As you kind of get a little further from the time that you did your norming and that sort of thing, it begins to change. But what I used to pay attention to, I still do, especially in instruction, is look at this number for me. How are we doing as a trend? Again, not 1 year, but how are we doing as a trend? In 2012, 3 to 8 math, it was 58 percentile state comparison. In 2013, it's 61. In 14, it's 62. Now go down and look at each of the subjects. Readings, 56 to 57 to 57. Science, 56 to 58 to 60 to 60 to 62 to 63. That's a 3-year trend. But it says a student entering Rutherford County schools, our trend, our growth trend is upward. That we're preparing students each year a little bit better than the prior year. And that's very important to look at those numbers, which kind of go with the letter grades that may be at the top. Here's another thing that you may want to take a look at, annual measurable objectives. And I know sometimes we use that acronym, sometimes the AMOs say, and that's one of the ways under the Waiver Act, No Child Left Behind, they call them annual measurable objectives. This is the achievement side, which are students that are proficient or advanced. So when you look at each of those lines in 3rd grade math, 74.8% of our students were proficient or advanced. The Tennessee average is 61.6. Rutherford County was 13.2% more students than Tennessee as a whole. So again, if you take a look at that, what I've done to help you visually see it very quickly, if the percentage is less than Rutherford County's, it's in red. So you can look at that kind of quickly to see as you do some comparisons. So really through many of the subjects we're double digit higher than state average in the annual measurable objectives there. So as you begin to look at here's another thing. I made a note at the bottom to make sure I shared this with you. Every district and every school are assigned individual AMO goals. Now this is the proficient or advanced. When Tennessee revamped and applied and received the waiver from the No Child Left Behind, you know, you can go to a classroom and get a D with a 70. The thing that Tennessee is now doing for the waiver is it takes about an 85 to be considered proficient, which is a B. And I can remember staying here a few years ago, some people said, you know, Maryland's got some of the toughest in the nation in comparisons. And I've heard and read several times Tennessee is right up there with many of them in their requirements. You can't be proficient on a TCAP or an EOC test with a 70 or a 75. It's about 85. It varies a little bit from subject to subject, but that's about what it is. So what you're saying is the equivalent in that third grade math, about 74.8%, scored about 85% of theirs were correct on the assessment that they took. So it's a high standard to meet. And again, you can kind of see some of the graduation rates and things across the bottom. But thought you might like to see those comparison, how we compare with some other districts in the state as a whole. Number 11, how many waiver points are there? You've heard us talk about this, and this has changed. And I'm not going to do all this for you. Look at achievement. That's the categories in achievement we have to meet to make our AMOs. Across the top, third grade math, this is the line that was on the other sheet, the elementary and the high school. These are your achievement. Once you look at that whole third grade math, you then have to break that down into all students, Asian, Black, Hispanic, Native American, Hawaiian, white. You have to also make these. The second thing that you have to make is the gap closures. And these are the gaps, the comparative gaps under the column with gaps that you make for each of those subjects. And that's what's included. Like in high school, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 are lumped together for gap closure, but you have to make those gaps. So Mr. Zago did a little calculation for me. So we talked about how many gaps have you got to make? You got a potential to have to make 170 gaps, 170 AMO measures. This has grown tremendously in recent years. You know, I'm just really kind of surprised. The biggest one, of course, being your subgroup achievement. They try to make every subgroup. What does that say for Rutherford County? I can tell you there's a world of school districts across this state that do not have you have to have at least 30 students in a tested subject for that to be a requirement for you. And there's a world of districts who would not have 30 students in English 2 or 30 students ELL in math or something. And so that's not one of the ones they have to meet. But Rutherford County, because of our size and diversity, pretty much have to meet all of those AMOs. So that's the challenge our principals and people face, is meeting all of those targets. Another way to look at it, how does Tennessee as a whole, the gap target is the most difficult thing with the waiver. The top one is Tennessee, and you can see out of all of the gaps in Tennessee, only 3 of them were attained statewide, and in our gaps, we only attained 3. 3.8 math with all students versus African American, Hispanic, and Native American added together, and English 2 and 3 for that category, and economically disadvantaged. So any principal of school will tell you the real tough part is gap closure. Why is gap closure so hard? Because suppose your gap is at 20%. If everybody goes up 4 more percent to 24, and they've assigned you a gap closure of 3%, then that means that the kids in that subgroup have got to gain the 4% what everyone else made, plus the 3 extra percent that they've made as your target. So they have to would gain 7%. Those kids in those subgroups, which are when they're special ed, when they're ELL, when they're other subgroups, they have to gain at a faster rate than your total population to close the gap. That's why it's so difficult. So, and well, I've got another. I'll show you a slide in a minute. How did we do on achievement measures in Rutherford County? The majority of our achievement measures, you had to make at least half of them. This is how you become an exemplary district, that sort of thing. If you look at ours, we achieved. In this, we met 9 out of 11 of those goals, those AMOs for achievement. You can look across there at other districts. It would vary depending on their grade structure and what they might have. In gap closure, we did not make gap closure, but I want you to look at that line. Gap closure attainment, how many districts did out of all those I've been listing for you tonight? None of us made it. Not Williamson, none of us made the gap closure. So you can see why that's so tough. We made 3 out of 16. Wilson made 1 out of 14 gaps. Williamson did make 10 out of 14, but you can kind of see some of your numbers across there. Putnam 1 out of 14. Gap closures are our toughest issues. TVOS effect scores. TVOS, the Value-Added Assessment System, is growth. A 4 or a 5, if you look at the second paragraph, the definition, 4 or 5 indicates that a district or school is statistically exceeding the expected growth. They project ahead based upon each student's prior performance. And if you get a 4 or 5, you're performing better than the projection, which means that you're adding value, positive value added to that student. So when we took elementary, high school, CTE, everything, Rutherford County, if you look up here in the corner in the green box, Rutherford County has an overall rating of 5, which from a statistical measure, we're adding value to students, and that includes high school, elementary, and everything together. That's what you want. You want to be adding high value added. That's not true overall. You can look across that line in some other districts and you don't see a 5 everywhere. One of the things that is a difficulty for us was that literacy, which was a 2. Now tonight I'm showing you the good things and the bad things. I haven't picked out just some things to show you tonight. As a board, you need to know these, because if we want to address it and do things, you have to know these things. But if you look across there, literacy, you remember me telling you that there was problems with 6th grade reading scores and 3rd grade reading scores? Well, look across there, and you got districts that perform extremely high, like Williamson's got a 3, we've got a 2. So there's some anomalies in testing that's wrapped into this too. So I hope that we renorm this and kind of get it back to where it's treating a little bit better measure. But anyway, you can kind of see how we're performing comparatively to others and how students are growing in Rutherford County schools. Let's look quickly at the value-added comparison. We got an A, a C, and 2 Bs. You can look at the other districts across there. I'll let you take a look at those. In the bottom are your high school courses. Anything from your ACT, composite, NDD is no detectable. So statistically, you're saying you're not a standard deviation above or something. That's simply what that says. It's kind of within an expected range. Doesn't mean you're losing or anything. It just says that you're not high enough to be classified advanced. We had one area, Algebra 1. You can look across there to the other districts and all to see we had 5 advanced scores there, which I thought was pretty good. In comparison, again, statistically above what was projected for the students to perform. 16, here's an interesting chart for you I thought you might want to study a little bit as you begin to look at that, how much has our enrollment changed? In 2004, we had 29,422 students. And last year in the 14, last year on this report card was 41,497. We've grown by 41% in 10 years. Now, why do we build buildings? Why are you facing such budgets? You got a 41% growth in 10 years. Phenomenal. And that comes to almost 4% a year, even though now it's not.
I was going to ask, is there any way to compare that to other school districts to see?
You could. You can at the report card. I did not do it, but it's archived. You could literally go back and look up a 2004 report card for another district. You could do that. And do it. As we've told you before, now that we have over 40,000 students, when you had 29,000 students, 4%, maybe you can see the numbers there, what you're talking about, maybe close to 1,000 or so. But if you run 4% with 41,000, you would be at 1,600 students. So when we grew last year, when this county with 1,100 students, the percentage was somewhat less than 41%, or, a 4% per year or so growth, but it still resulted in a large number of students because you're taking a percent from a much larger number from your enrollment. So I think you'll also interesting you to study what's our demographic changes. The white population's dropped in those 10 years, 13.8%. Black African Americans increased 5.5%, Hispanics 6.5%. Our Asian population's up 1.7%. That again supports some of the diversity that we're seeing. Going down to the ELL, we've grown 1,273 students in these 10 years. Economically disadvantaged, again, in 2004, the free reduced was 30.1%. Last year, 42.2%. So again, over the 10 years, we've had a 12% growth. So I said earlier, it's roughly 1% or so a year, and that's what you're seeing. Our special education population, again, I'm proud of this number. We had 15.3% and 2.4%, and last year's 11.4%. I tell you, our teachers, our principals, our interventions are working. We're reaching students much quicker. How about the per pupil expenditure? In 2004 it was $6,132. Last year, $8,365. Over the 10 years, it's gone up $2,233.50. I thought this was just a little interesting statistic there. We've grown by 41% in our enrollment, but our budget per pupil expenditure has gone up 36.4%. We've actually gotten more efficient as we've gone over the last 10 years. That's a good thing to look at. Also, in the last 10 years under local, from 2004, there's 5.46% less local monies. We're depending more on state and federal, mostly state with 5.05. So as your constituents question you, that's why I'm providing you this, and you need to talk about it, and people want to know. This is some things that you can look at that kind of tells you how is Rutherford County Schools performing. Any questions about any of that? It just kind of speaks for itself. It is what it is. The next slide is certified staffing, 5 and 10 years. Again, we've changed 944 teachers in 10 years. Administrators, we've increased by 42. It's interesting, the teachers per administrator in 2004 was 4.4%, and last year it was 4.4%. So we actually, the ratio of administrators to teachers, even though we're still one of the lowest in Tennessee, when you go back and look at it, it really hasn't changed. So we've hired administrators commensurate with the growth in the students and the teaching population. At the bottom is simply the page that when somebody wants to go in and apply for a job in Rutherford County application, this is with our SearchSoft, and that's where Ms. Barnes is. Looking at that, attending a conference with that over in Franklin, but that's kind of what that looks like. Some of you may have seen that before. Accountability summary, where are we? This is another thing that comes out. What is a priority school? Priority schools is a school in the lowest performing 5% of schools in Tennessee in terms of academic achievement. Rutherford County has 0 priority schools. We've never had a priority school. I hope it doesn't happen this year, but we've never had a priority school. Focus school, they're in the 10% of schools in the state with the largest achievement gaps between groups of students. And Rutherford County has never had a focal school. We were 0. There's 144 of them in Tennessee. But you'll look across there, you'll find Mr. Zago and I did a lot of sweating till all of this came out. You know, when you look at the gaps and you see what they are to have no focal schools, and you look at the other districts across there and how many of the focal schools that they have, being in the lowest 10% of the state and being able to close gaps, we do pretty well at that. We had 5 reward schools. And a reward school is in the top 5% of schools in the state for performance or TVOS or growth. And those, and we mentioned earlier too, Central Magnet, Homer Pittard, Lascassas, McFadden, and Stewart's Creek Elementary are state reward schools. They're in the top 5% of the state. That's pretty good. This one, a little bit to let you see, this is looking ahead. What's our targets for 2015? We already know. How do we count how much we have to grow? Here's basically the way that they count this. They subtract, you know, No Child Left Behind was to be 100% proficient, and GAPS to be 0%. That's your goal. They basically take ever how much you like and divide it by 8 years, and that's how much you have to grow. That's the rough measure that they do that. So whereas in 14, our 3rd grade through 8th grade reading language arts, our goal, the number we had was 60.8%. Our goal for 15 is 63.3%. So the bar keeps going up. And now here's the tough side of it. If you do really well and beat that number, they start with that number to go again. you know, you don't, I mean, if you just had to say how much more you did than the last goal, no, it becomes a brand new goal. You know, and so it's raised again. So the carrot's always out in front of you. So our graduation rate for this next year is 92.4. And remember, graduation rate one's one year behind because of summer school and the opportunity to graduate in 4 years and 1 summer. In addition to that, where you have the achievement targets are on the left, Rutherford County's achievement targets on the left, you also have to meet, like see that subgroup achievement target? There are 13 of those. I've only got one, Black, Hispanic, Native American. There are 13 of those that go with each of these lines up here. Okay, you know, line 1 up there has got 13 of these that go with it that you have to make when you're looking at that. Over on the right-hand side, our gap closure targets. What's the most difficult? And that's our new targets of closing. Again, our toughest targets are limited English language learners or limited English. Sometimes you see LEP, sometimes you see ELL. Students with disabilities. So it shows up both in elementary and high school. Special education, limited English are our toughest gaps to close. That probably doesn't surprise you. So I'll end with this one. So looking forward, what's our academic challenges? Well, one thing, we didn't make Algebra 1 last year. We want to make Algebra 1 next year. That was the one achievement AMO. Basically, there we didn't make, and the other one we didn't make was the 3 to 8 reading. I think a lot of that was those anomalies in testing. So 2 of the things that we look at now is certainly reading. Why did I say even 3 to 8, but why did I say K through 12 and looking at that? Even though the fact we're 11.2% better than the state average, reading is so critical to our upcoming assessment. And remember, every district has a different AMO goal based on wherever you were. They do that division by basically 8, and you get a new goal. So Algebra 1 and reading overall is a goal that we are really on top of. For us as a district, RTI Square is big. Increase reading, language arts, and math to try to address those things that we have above. Plus, again, I think, you know, if we reduce those special ed numbers, if we are picking those students up earlier, then we're cutting back on our dropouts, we're cutting back on our kids who are not making. And the last one, I think, is I cannot forget, because our good scores and the things you're looking at tonight is because of our teachers, our principals, our people working out in the field. It's very important to us to be able to attract and retain highly effective teachers. I read an article the other day that I really do agree with, And this person was very astute in understanding. The problem is not getting rid of bad teachers. The problem is being able to attract the very best students to be your teachers. And sometimes that comes with the salaries you pay and the other amenities that come with that. So one of the things that we did the salary thing for you last year and all, and we've been 2 or 3 years now, we haven't been able to give our teachers a raise or anything. We need to look at that for our budget. We lost several teachers this year to Williamson County, just to be honest with you. I signed several. I don't want to lose our best and brightest. And I think we have to think about that with all of our employees to keep the best people. You got to look at that because that makes or breaks us. That's all I have this evening. Do you have an additional question?
A lot of information in one evening, Mr. Odom.
Well, it is. That's why I gave it to you, for you can look over it.
It also gives us an opportunity to study it, and each board member can come back to you either by email or phone or request a meeting to go over to clarify also. Is that okay with the board? Just take that opportunity.
I had one comment. I went while kind of during the presentation and searched for one thing, because from where I draw constituency, the Daily News Journal, WGNS, they do a great job, covering our local events. But a lot of times we take a look at Nashville and we compare ourselves there, particularly in the shadow of Nashville up in the Laverne area. And I know this is true, and I wanted to have that. Page 5, it is. Davidson County's enrollment is 82,806, about twice our size. Their teachers, 5,394. That's a student-teacher ratio of 6.5%, or 6.5, whereas we're 15.2. 6.5 versus 15.2. And then that administrator ratio is at 9. So 603 administrators in that system. So, I know it's a different kind of system, very metropolitan and all that kind of stuff, but you've given us very similar systems here. This is one that's very close by, and yet the efficiency of the teachers and the efficiency of the investment by taxpayer money, it's just outstanding. And I don't want to miss the opportunity to point out that comparison, not to beat up on Davidson County. I know they're doing their very best, but man, we're doing a really good job.
I did not pick systems that we could beat or things like that we knew. Just those that I thought would be closer to us that you'd be interested in.
Excellent presentation. Thank you, Mr. Odom. We'll put you back to work up here now. Yes, sir.
We would not make another AMO on those achievement AMOs. Graduation rate is part of those, so Rutherford County would be deficit. You would have missed another one. There's not really a financial thing like it is now. It's not, when Tennessee received a waiver, it's not the same criteria or measure that you once had. But each school, again, as you begin to look at that, some of this is just plain pride, and hard work at what you're doing. You certainly don't want to be a focus school. The state's achievement school district, I didn't put that up there. You should see the achievement school district's TVOS performance. And we can go in and look at every school in the state. They tend to rank at the very bottom. That's why they're talking about some of your issues there. The online school is the lowest scoring in the state of Tennessee, and I think you saw that they said if they didn't improve this year that they would have to close it. It ranked dead last. You don't want any of that. I mean, the people of Rutherford County deserve better than that. I think we're delivering better.
Once you, and it's all out to you, nod if you want to, once you raise your graduation rate 10%, 2/10%, whatever, the next time you go about doing the same thing and increasing it, get another percent, or another percent, or another percent out of that, closer you get to 100, the harder it's got to be. Is that not fair, Mr. Spurlock? I was wondering on page 6, Wilson County's graduation rate for 13-14 is 96.2%. And I wonder if there's something there that they're doing that
We,
perhaps is affecting.
we may not want to talk about them publicly on a,
Like I said, let's not discuss that right now.
I was contacted about a company, my company said, now you can do this to raise your graduation rate, and that's when I was still over there in instruction. Mr. Gill and I talked, I said, that's an ethical question to me, so
Okay.
I'll leave it alone.
All right, I'm gonna go back to page 3 for just a second.
But again, the demographics are different too. So the more diverse your system, the culture of some of the people, some of the students that are entering ours are not to finish 13 years of school, kindergarten through high school. And so again, the more diverse you become, and with some of those, you're also overcoming a culture to get that graduate. And you don't see in some of those other schools that same level of diversity in numbers.
Go back to page 3 for just a minute. It's sort of, I think, refer back to something Mr. Holliday said just a few minutes ago. I'm just looking at this, and we have dealt with this figure before on the per pupil expenditure. And we are roughly $1,000 behind the Tennessee state average, almost to the dollar.
It's $41,000. How much would it, 41,000 students, how much money would it take
If
to?
it was $1,000, that'd be $42 million.
Okay.
Now, we could tax for that, and then we could burn the courthouse down. But, Mr. Holloway, I'm not disagreeing with you at all, and that's what you said, I thought it was very much on point. But I think there's something to be said here, that if you do a really good job, really excel, and take care of your money, I mean, you're there, you got a great staff, from the best people in the state, et cetera, you get less money. That's your reward.
From your local?
And maybe from a local too. I mean, we appear to be $1,000 behind for a student. I'm not suggesting that we not do a good job. Obviously, I'm just saying that appears to be our lot in life. I'm not sure if there's any solution, or if I'm even asking a question, but there it is.
You'll find state money's a little bit higher also in some other districts, but remember, under the TASSER formula that funds are distributed under the basic education program, one of the biggest factors in it is socioeconomic and that sort of thing, and taxable ability. So Rutherford County does not get as much. I think we're maximizing it or getting very close to that, Jeff Sandvig and others in doing that, but we will not draw as much as there are counties in the state don't even have a Walmart in the county. There's almost no way to raise funds to do it. So the state, that was that small schools lawsuit a number of years ago. It's also, there's talk of that again, and so you probably will hear in the governor's budget again some adjustments to try to, again, fund some of those smaller counties that do not have that. But when that happens, it's a little bit tougher on us because the state pie, it's a state pie, every how many dollar it is. So if you're going to give more monies to some others, if their pie slice grows, then everybody else's pie slice has to get a little bit smaller. So in simple terms, I mean, that's what you deal with.
anything else? Okay. Number 9.
Number 9, we're in facilities, and this is Stewart's Creek Middle School Soccer Scoreboard. Principal Latony Murray has requested permission to purchase and install a scoreboard in the Stewart's Creek complex at the soccer field that is utilized by Stewart's Creek Middle and Stewart's Creek High boys and girls soccer teams. The scoreboard will be funded, purchased, and installed by Stewart's Creek Middle and High Schools at an estimated cost of $4,500, and the electrical will be installed by Rutherford County Schools Maintenance Department. Recommend approval. The motion to approve the Stewart's Creek Middle School scoreboard request as presented.
You've heard the motion. And have motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Mr. Odom, on these, since you read through these all last night, do you just want to give the policy number and what they're for, rather than going through each one?
I'll be glad to do that if you would.
Is that okay with the board, since they were,
Whatever you'd like to
since we
do.
were detailed last night?
Right, there's some statutory change dealing with the first one, 1.704 for charter schools. Hepatitis B, we're increasing the people that we provide a vaccine for, and they're the behavior intervention teacher and educational assistants for their protection. We're changing the sick leave bank to allow an additional bereavement days for employees. And also, our classified employees have not had a sick leave bank in the past. State law now allows that, so we're proposing this policy to have a sick leave bank for our classified employees. Personal and professional leave, this deletes an amount of personal leave for employees. It'll be included in administrative procedure. We're taking it out of the policy, putting it in administrative procedure. There's really not any change in that. Now, student wellness, and again, Ms. Jenna Stitzel, who is our health coordinator, came in with this. It took some things about encouraging activity for students. The supervision policy, again, is that we're now saying that if an employee is to report back to us if they have been indicted as a perpetrator of child abuse or by the Children's Service, or also let us know if the State Department of Education flags their teaching license for some reason. We discovered the State Department of Education doesn't bother to tell us when they've flagged a teacher's license. We're asking them to report to us. Advertising and distributing materials in schools. This again allows some advertising in schools, and this you see on baseball fields, football fields, that sort of thing. As part of their revenue, they need to do some advertising from local businesses for that. So that's why that policy. And so the motion is to approve the revisions of policies 1.704, 5.402, 5.302, 5.304, 5.303, 6.411, 5.108, and 1.806 on the first reading as recommended by the Policy Committee.
Heard the motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And number 11 is for information only.
Okay, would you want me to read that for the public to hear?
Yes, sir, probably so.
Okay, I think it's kind of amazing numbers.
Yes, sir.
The Transportation Department was budgeted 6 buses for the 2014-15 school year, additional buses. We have put 5 buses through October. This brings us to a total bus fleet of 242. We've exhausted the first priority list and currently at number 13 out of 63 contractors on the second priority list. For people that may be listening to us on television, Rutherford County does not own its buses. We contract with private employers for our buses. Buses are traveling a total of 18,122 miles per day, which equals 362,440 miles a month, or 3,624,400 miles per year. This year, we're utilizing the iNow student database to track students who ride a bus. This requires each school to identify those students and input their bus information. As of the end of September, we're showing 26,257 students are assigned to buses that live at least 1.5 miles or further from school and are being transported each day. And for the public, we carry more students than that, but the state does not reimburse you if it's not at least a mile and a half. But we pick up students closer to school no matter how. We're just having to absorb that, and it's local monies and funds that do that. At the end of 2013-14 school year, we showed transporting 25,280. We've also transported 115 ATLAS, which are Academic Time Leads to Achieving Students, and these are homeless students, basically under that acronym. A Rutherford County Schools Assistance Program for Families in Transition through the end of October compared to 103 in 2013. We've had 4 accidents with 5 injuries so far this year compared to 9 in 2013 with 1 injury. All buses are equipped with video surveillance, which is used by schools, the transportation department, and bus drivers to identify individuals and actions involving misconduct. We've pulled 147 videos from buses through the month of October compared to pulling 106 in 2013.
All right. Okay, we're to the point of general discussion. We had quite a bit last night regarding our upcoming meeting on the 13th. Continue to put together your thoughts and questions. Ms. Joyce, I will try to make sure I get the list from TSBA and send to you, and then you can distribute to board members, and then we can kind of pick out our own talking points. So, anything else tonight? It's been a lengthy meeting. And we're together again, I think Saturday?
Tuesday.
Oh, Tuesday? Oh, special call, that's right. Okay. All right. Again, anything else before the board? We stand adjourned.